PlayStation is one of the most popular gaming consoles in the gaming industry. PlayStation has been going strong now for more than 10 years. That's a freaking decade. Of course, with the PlayStation being around for such a long time, there's bound to be an abundance of interesting facts lying around about the systems. Today I'll be sharing with you guys 10 things you didn't know about the PlayStation, or probably didn't know. Hopefully you guys learned something new. Let's get on with it. The PlayStation originally started as a Super Nintendo add-on. By the early 90s, multimedia was everything, and even ultra-conservative companies like Nintendo wanted to dip their toes into the vast ocean of CD quality audio and slideshow quality video. Ken Kutaragi, who helped design the Super Nintendo Entertainment System's amazing sound chip, spearheaded the creation of the Nintendo PlayStation, which would play existing Super Nintendo titles along with the new SNES CD format. Unfortunately for Sony, the Nintendo head chairman basically wanted no sort of right restriction and stuff like that, so they ditched this whole PlayStation Super Nintendo Entertainment System idea, and of course Sony went their own way with the PlayStation. PlayStation lost a mascot before it even came out in the US. Of course, there's mascots for PlayStation. We know there's Spyro and there's, Crash Bandicoot. But the very first mascot for PlayStation was meant to be the jagged 3D polygon man, who actually appears in PlayStation Battle Royale. Basically, what happened was the jagged purple polygon man was meant to be a showcase or a show-off of the amazing 3D visuals that looked apparently great back in 1995. At the presentation at E3 in 1995, the character went absolutely insane, glitching everywhere and everything like that. Basically, Ken Kutaragi had to take this guy out because, he was glitching everywhere, he went insane and stuff. But like I mentioned before, he actually appears as a final boss in PlayStation Battle Royale. That guy there was actually meant to be the very first PlayStation mascot. However, he was lost due to his insaneness. Certain PlayStation mascots actually have an anime makeover. For the likes of Spyro and Crash Bandicoot, they were actually released out in Japan, and they got an anime makeover for their box arts. As you guys can see, this picture right here, both Spyro and Crash have a more anime cuter look to them, comparing it to, of course, the American box art, which looks like, normal Crash and normal Spyro. Of course, the Japanese box art of the games have an anime version, which look cuter. Some people may ask, why did the PlayStation 3 logo change to the more simplistic look of the PS3 logo that you guys can see on screen now? The very first PS3 logo was this one, and if you compare the very first PlayStation 3 logo to the Spider-Man logo, as you guys can see, Ken Kutaragi decided to use the Spider-Man font for the very first PlayStation 3 logo. In 2009, this logo for PlayStation 3 was dropped because of the fact that he didn't want people being, having PlayStation confused with Spider-Man. And on top of that, he wanted it, he wanted PS3 to be easier to read in advertisements. So they decided to go with a more simplistic logo for PlayStation 3 and just have it PS3. Ken Kutaragi actually hated Crash Bandicoot. Yes, that's right, the head, the chairman, the godfather of the PlayStation brand actually had a very serious problem with Crash Bandicoot, acting as the face of Sony. Now you guys may wonder what the hell is wrong. I mean, Crash Bandicoot is one of the biggest mascots for PlayStation. It is what made the PlayStation, alongside with Spyro, of course. Basically, Sony's intended message for the PlayStation was for edgy teen gamers, but of course, Crash's status as a goofy, cartoony platformer conflicted with the company's intended message. When Kutaragi finally confronted a Naughty Dog representative with his distaste for Crash, he offered up a list of complaints including, "This game is crap." Ultimately, Ken shouldn't have got so stressed, but, Crash eventually faded from the mainstream after countless outsourced sequels, and of course, Naughty Dog became a Sony-owned studio in 2001, and, Crash went its own separate way with the terrible Crash of the Titans. When we think of the PlayStation mascots, of course we think about, Crash Bandicoot and Spyro, but for the Japanese, it's a different story. They don't think, when PlayStation comes to the head, they don't think, oh, Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, the amazing mascots of the PlayStation 1 era. No, they think of a white cat named Toro. Yes, Toro is a small white cat who made his debut in the Japan-only 1999 PlayStation release Doko Demo Isho. Since then, Toro and his black cat counterpart Koro has appeared in a number of PlayStation titles and of course merchandise. But the significance of this character is mostly lost on a lot of us who obviously think of Crash or Spyro for the PlayStation mascots. When you guys think of the original PlayStation logo, of course it's the, astounding PS logo, the one with the 4 different colors, the blue, yellow, green, and red. Well, actually, interestingly enough, that wasn't the first logo for the first era of PlayStation. Before then, there were numerous creations of different PlayStation logos. If you guys have a look at this picture right here, you'll see many different logos for the PlayStation. Obviously, the people at Sony had so many different ideas for the logo, but finally they ended up with the 4 different color PS logo, which was good because as you guys can see, some of these logos look, well, pretty shit. I mean, the first one up there, the 3 different colored disc thing with the yellow, red, blue sort of discs, that looks really weird, but I'm happy that they ended up with the 4 colored different PS logo. Looks good, but yeah, Sony, you had a lot of ideas up your sleeve, didn't you? Did you know that there's actually a meaning behind those white towers on the PlayStation 2 startup screen? Yes, that's right, it's not some sort of aesthetic look to the introduction of your PlayStation 2 startup screen every time you turn the console on. There's actually a purpose and meaning behind those white towers. As you guys would know, the startup screen zooms through a seemingly random arrangement of white towers through a space-age whoosh sound. But is there something more to these rectangular objects? It turns out that the PlayStation 2's bases the visual composition of its startup screen entirely on the contents of your memory card. So I suppose the more sort of white towers you have on the startup screen of your PS2, the more shit you have on your memory card. Interesting. The port of Riven, the sequel to Myst, actually featured the most discs for a single PlayStation game. Yes, Riven featured 5 freaking discs just to play through the whole game. 5 discs! Seriously guys, these days we can fit amazingly beautiful graphics with hefty cutscenes and amazing features on one singular disc or even on flash drives. But back then, Riven was so advanced, so beautiful, that it actually took 5 discs to fit it on. That is absolutely insane. I mean, 2 discs is enough to play through a game, but 5 freaking discs? Holy shit. Did you know that there's actually meaning behind the symbols used on the PlayStation controller? Yes, the infamous triangle, square, and circle and X actually have a meaning behind them. Sort of strange to think, right? The circle and the cross align with the Japanese symbols for yes and no. The triangle symbolizes a player's head or perspective, and the square represents a menu, document, or map. Not really sure what that means, but there's really the meaning behind the symbols. Interesting, I just thought they were sort of pretty, sort of unique looking symbols with the different colors, but there's actually a meaning behind them. Holy shit, Sony, you got secrets everywhere. Well guys, that is it. That is 10 things you didn't know or probably didn't know about the PlayStation. Hopefully you guys learned something new today. Of course, Sony have secrets left, right, and center, and there's some interesting things on the PlayStation, whether it's PS1, 2, 3, Vita, PSP, PS4, who really knows? There's secrets everywhere. These are just 10 things. There's a heap of, more things and interesting facts about PlayStation out there. All it takes is a bit of research. I may do another video on some, unknown things about, PlayStation again. But for the meantime, check out my other videos. Like this video if you guys enjoyed. If you guys want to see more things to do with the different consoles, then I will be doing, of course, things on Xbox and things on Nintendo. So just wait, because in time to come, I will come out with those. But until next time, I will catch you guys later. Peace.